tonight's message. Aman. Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Mashapachi, Yam Zion Shalom. Peace to everybody on this, or getting ready to go into the seventh day. I guess Yam Zion Shalom. Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Peace, peace, peace. Welcome. Thank you for being on with us. We appreciate you. Hopefully you're enjoying your Shabbat. I will not be before you too long, especially since it's taken once again forever and a day. Prayerfully, I've reconfigured since we've been gone. It seems like the signal issue has completely changed or gotten way worse since we have come back. So prayerfully we'll be able to get this under control. But prayerfully everybody can see and hear us all right. Thank you so much to Duff for being on with us one more again. We're going to jump right into tonight. Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Peace. And hopefully all is well with everybody. So we'll jump right in. You can just repeat after me for the Bible pledge. We'll jump right in for a quick message. This is my Bible. This is my sword. In this will I trust. For Yahshua is Lord. No sword of God shall ever be heard. For this is my Bible. And this is Yah's word. Hashem Yahweh. Aman. Which is Yahweh Shem. His name, His authority, let it be done unto us. You may be seated to go back to what you're doing in the presence of the Most High. Yahweh Alacham. Shabbat Shalom. How's everybody doing? How you doing, Elder Anais? Sister Joy, Sister Deborah, Brother Cole, Darius. Did I see Deborah? Deborah on here. Dinah, Sister Dinah, Sister Monica, G Money. Prayer for everything. You're feeling better. Achet Dinah. Praying for healing. You see Hot Boys. Everybody lie there and everybody for miss you. Name charged to my head, not to my heart. I'm thankful and grateful and appreciative. Mic check, 1, 2. Can everybody hear us? Yes, no, maybe so. Yes, no, maybe so. Can everyone hear us? While we're waiting on that too, only announcement I have for this evening, besides we'll see you tomorrow, 8 a.m. New York time tomorrow, is don't forget that we are meeting up October 6th through the 13th in Georgia again for the Feast of Tabernacles. So prayerfully you shall be able to join us. We will have more information going out. Keep checking everywhere for flyers and things of that nature. We'll be talking about it whenever we have our SOC community meetings or teachings, etc. And we'll make sure that we're announcing it from now on. If you are coming for 1 to 2 days, we're asking for a donation of 300, mandatory donation. We got to have at least 300. Not including if we do shirts. The shirts will be somewhere between, depending on how many persons get the shirts, we might do some, and even if you're not coming in person, you can still get one. But we're looking at probably somewhere between $20 to $40 per shirt. So we're trying to see. I need to talk with our SOC business persons and see what we can come up with. How you doing, Brother Rodney? How you doing, Big Brother Charles? Big Brother Charles, thanks for being on. But yeah, so if you're coming 1 to 2 days, we're asking for a donation of 300, and you're gonna need to be able to take care of tent and things of that nature. Not sure this year, to be honest with you, how much we can actually help with getting everybody to and from the airport, or how often, because that always depends on who's coming, etc. So cannot guarantee that. So if there are persons coming at different times, when everybody fill out paperwork and everything, we're going to try and see who can come with who and share stuff. We might be able to help out every once in a while, or maybe we can help somewhat with that, but just to let it be known that we cannot guarantee it, especially if we have the amount of persons that we're expecting, at least bare minimum 50 to 60 persons at our height of persons during those 8 days. We got so much stuff going on, we can't guarantee who's going to do what and everything as of yet. But the closer we get to it, we might be able to get more details on that, just to give a heads up. But if you're coming 1 to 2 days, we're looking for a donation of 300. The same price has been the last 2 years. It has not changed. If you're coming for 1 to 2 days, we're asking for a donation of 300. If you're coming, which is about 150 per night. If you're coming for 3 to 4 days, we're asking for a donation of 350. That takes it down to about, if you were to do 4 days, that would take it down to about $87 a night, 87 and some change, I think, a night. If you're coming 5 to 6 days, let's say you were to go 6 days, we're asking for $400 donation. That $400 donation would take you down, if you did 6 days, to about $66 and some change a night. If you're coming if you're doing 7 to 8 days, we're asking for $450 donation. Or if you were to look at this 8 days, you'd be in there, that takes you down to like $58 and some change, something like that per night. So the longer you stay, actually the more valuable it is. It's valuable no matter how long you come, but obviously, if you're talking about trying to save money, you're actually saving money by being there longer. So if you can start working those dates out, by the way, this has been out, it's been on the calendar, it's been on the website, it's been on Google Calendar at times, it's been discussed over and over again. October 6th through the 13th. So if you're able, you still got some time. If you didn't start making sure earlier in the year, you started taking time off, set those days apart. If you're trying to see if your children could be out of school, those who homeschool, come on down, no problem. But even if you're trying to find a way out, if you need me to write a letter for something, whatever the case might be, talk about your belief systems, etc., to help with your job or to help your children as far as school. If they're pulling them out of school, obviously do what you feel led to do. But we're just saying, if you do that, let us know. We can help out. And if you are planning on coming, even if you don't know if you can come, when we send out the paperwork for everybody to fill out for us, the survey, please, ma'am, please, sir, if you want to come, say that it's a maybe at least, so that we can start planning. And when we call or when we have somebody reach out to you, we can see what is the exact thing we need to do. Do we need to look at if we have extra money, can we help? Do we need to look at, hey, if there's extra tents or something, we can take care of you? Do we need to look at making sure that, whatever we need to do to make sure that you can be helped out, taken care of. If we need to look out for you for hotel expenses possibly, if that becomes something, whatever the case might be, we want to know in advance. So just let us know. TikTok is buffering. I don't know what else to tell you guys. TikTok's buffering again. I can't do but so much. I don't know. So TikTok is buffering really bad for everybody again. Because I really don't know what to do about TikTok buffering. If it's buffering, it's going to be buffering, I guess. At least until I get something else to be able to use for Wi-Fi. But I apologize if TikTok is buffering. It's on the best signal that I have. So I apologize. Once again, pray for us. Prayerfully, we'll be able to get back on track. Trying to see if I can get a better hotspot Wi-Fi. Because the hotspot Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi at the location I'm at, Wi-Fi's that I'm even able to use in other places apparently in the areas, we seem to be having issues. So it is what it is. But thank you everybody for being on. How you doing, Sister Iska? How you doing, Sister Mignon? All right, let's go ahead and get into this word. All right. Word for this evening. So the word for this evening, right, is basically, that our people are rising up. How can we say this? Matter of fact, what is the... I need to be careful. Hold on one second, y'all. See, now that I done messed with the signal. I got this stuff all messed up in my brain. Let me do something real quick, y'all. Forgive me. Let's get to I got to look at my notes. What is the theme for the night? That's bad, isn't it? I can't memorize everything all the time, though, so sometimes you got to go here to figure out what's going on. All right, here we go. All right, I got my stuff up now. Sorry about that. How you doing, Elder Tamara? How's everybody doing? Okay, for tonight we're going to talk about from the depths. From F-R-O-M space the T-H-E space depths D-E-P-T-H-S. From the depths of the waters, from the depths of the ocean, from the depths of being buried. Yahweh has us ready to rise up. This message is led by the Vachakodash. I'm not sure where exactly we're going scripture-wise. I do have a couple notes of things I'm supposed to speak on, but I'm not sure where we're going on all the little ups and downs of the roller coaster. So please feel free to put on your, what they say, put on your seatbelts, I guess, and be ready to go on this roller coaster, because what Yahweh has for us from the depths is Holy Spirit. When she was giving this to me, it was, there's some of it that's just for me, but a reminder for our people, and so I'm going to be obedient. So from the depths, right? From the depths. Important that we catch this title and this mindset, this thought process of from the depths. Now, the thing that got me on this is doing some research, doing some studying and things. I came across something, which I've come before, which is, but I came across the fact that obviously a bunch of our, if we're talking about our diaspora, Negroes, so-called black persons, Native Americans, etc., Um, Even if you want to go to other places too, Irish persons, Scottish persons, etc., have had many cities that have been burned down, or many cities that have been torn down, or many cities that because of somebody coming through and sending plague in. Even if you look at what's um, Genghis Khan and the Mongols would do to places like China, India, etc. Um, all these persons even would fight against the Japanese and the Korean folk. A lot of persons don't know about that, but there's a lot of places that have existed in time to where over time their cities for whatever reason have been eradicated. And Genghis Khan and them even would send heads over and diseases over. They fought with disease warfare and stuff as well. Right? You see stuff still to this day where persons want to act like nobody's doing this stuff, but still to this day, right? It's mustard gas, even if it's not used, supposedly not used in combat and war, you'll see that mustard gas is still something that's used. Is YouTube working? Can you guys hear us on YouTube? You guys know maybe so? Everybody's saying TikTok is probably not YouTube seems to be going around. But anyways, hopefully this works out for tonight. Let me be obedient and stick to the script. I'm out. All right. So, how you doing, Bruder Richard? So, and all these different things that are going on, real talk, right? And all these things that are going on, all these things that are happening, I need persons to recognize and realize that there also is another part of this to where there are many cities, many parts of our culture, many ancient civilizations that are not only buried by land or were taken out by fire, but were buried by water, right? And tonight, once again, the theme is from the depths. And it's very interesting because many places were systemically and systematically simply just buried in water, sometimes with no word being given whatsoever, right? There's many places, Seneca Falls, right? If you're looking at, if you're looking at that Sugar Ditch, right? Places buried underground, buried by water. If you're looking at places like, what is the name by now? Central Park, New York, right? Not only was that buried and put underground, but then right next to it, another city was buried in the water, in the river, or whatever you want to call it, that's there, right next to Central Park, or at least the Central Park area, right? We can keep on going. Even if we're not talking about buried in the water, we're going to focus on that for a reason, you'll see. But I mean, obviously we know about Tulsa, we know about Philadelphia, we know about Wilmington, North Carolina, we know about a plethora of places to where our people had places, right? And now you can't find them. Look at what happens with the Lakota people or the Dakota people, right? Look at what happened with those who were Seminole. Look at what's happening with the land now, to where persons are ripping the land from the Gullah Geechee, even more so than what they did before. You look at the Khalifa people, where we don't even think about California outside of being American or being Mexican or being Spanish, right? Forgetting that there were natives there and that there were so-called black natives there that were actually the Khalifa people. At least many of them were. Many stuff is buried. Many persons will go to Sioux land and not even thinking about the Sioux, and they'll see Mount Rushmore. But here's the problem that's happening. Now, it's not a problem for us, but it's a problem for our enemy. How you doing, Brother Vincent? How you doing, Tabitha? So here's the problem that's happening, and it's not a problem for us per se, but it is a problem for our enemy. And so be ready, because our enemies do not like that this is happening. But from the depths, right, our people are being seen and being heard. From the depths of the water that has been put over them, from the depths of all the stuff that was our press, black press in Wilmington, North Carolina, from the depths of the Lakota people and Dakota people who had their land taken for nothing and were lied on to say that they took somebody's cow, therefore their land deserved to be taken from the depths of persons in Alabama who literally, the unborn babies that never had a chance because the women, when they were little girls, were snatched from their parents who didn't know how to read or write and were forced to sign contracts with exes so that they would take their daughters and make sure that their daughters couldn't have children. From the depths, right, of the Maroons in Jamaica, who seem to have been forgotten, yet if you study them, they still are sovereign to this day, right? From the depths of the sovereign former slaves who came over and fought for freedom and became sovereign in Mexico. Our story, the story of our people, is being told in such a manner, and it's coming out, and persons don't like the fact that, hey, we thought we drowned this story. We thought this water was underwater. We thought this water was underground. We thought this story was never going to come out. See, his story doesn't include what he did to you. Right? His story doesn't talk about you but a footnote. It doesn't say how they defeated you in battle, if they even defeated you properly in battle. It just says that they defeated. It doesn't say that, his story says, right, the blood still cries out, the blood still speaking on our behalf, right? So his story doesn't tell you, oh, yeah, those natives, we promised them they would have stuff. We off them with chemical warfare, and then the ones that were left over that wouldn't listen to us, we basically offed every last one of them and took their daughters, and the ones that survived became nothing more than breeding grounds for us, right? And it's difficult for a lot of persons to hear this, because what's happened is George Washington is supposed to be your hero, but what happens when your precedent sets a precedence for not heroes, but for the most vile and disgusting of human beings? What happens when George Washington hates black folk, but loves chattel slavery and money so much that he'll marry a woman that passes for white and owns about 80%, 75, 80% of the slaves that they'll both own together, and he can take whatever belongs to her, right? What happens when we actually dig up in the Declaration of Independence, where it talks about natives as being nothing more than savages or wild? When these things are brought up from the depths, persons don't like it, because black folk ain't supposed to be able to swim. Right? That we're not supposed to be able to go through the water. We're not supposed to be able to hold our breath without an apparatus. We're not supposed to be able to tell our story. Our ancestry is supposed to be lost to us, and yet, see, they only want you to know that you were nothing and that you couldn't do. But what about the fact that we were such a threat to you that not only did you take out of people, that's one thing, but to hide their relevance, or at least what you think you're doing is hiding our relevance. How you doing, Sister Beck? To hide this people, this nation's relevance, should speak to us, because it should let us know very specifically, oh, they're afraid of us actually being in place. Right? It's one thing to say, hey, I want to be rich, I want to control. But no. They're afraid to let us have any say-so. But our past is speaking so much from the depths that we can't ignore it anymore. I'm not saying that our ancestry are ghosts. However, I am telling you that we are our ancestors. We come from them. And there's things that Yah had promised. And there's others who tried their best. Matter of fact, sometimes we messed it up. Sometimes we said, okay, we're gonna I want you to think about this. I know some persons are going to like me talking about this, because it's not the easiest thing to discuss. But real talk, beloved. We decided to give up our own businesses and give up on our own businesses, so that we could sit on the back of the bus. Until you swim like a fish and it was free. We did that all the time. Yeah, I swim well as well. So does my son, right? But I'm saying they didn't think that we'd be able to swim. They didn't think we'd be able to make it through this water, make it through the murky stuff that they put on top of us in our culture, or at least so they thought they did. But through the sediment, some of us are willing to go through and fish through and dig through enough to be able to find the remnant of who we be. Right? So the man prophesied to those dry bones. That's where we're going to end up, right? But I want us to know that there are a lot of persons that don't study us and study what's happening, or even looking at what's happening from the depths. See, our story is one where resurrection is happening now, in a sense, right? Resurrection is happening now, to where we were a people who were buried, and now have not only been resurrected in times past, but we're now resurrected, right? And really what persons are afraid of is that if we resurrect and then redirect our worship and praise towards righteousness and who Yahweh is, then they know that we must, at some point, there has to be a point where we insurrect. And that's scary for somebody that's had control over people, or has told them they're nothing, and we've believed it, or at least we thought there was no way out. But we're starting to see that, certain things that are being resurrected. Like, for example, we had buried the principle that we are a majority. We've only heard about being the minority for so long that even persons that live in majority black countries still talk about themselves as needing help as if they're the minority. But now we're starting to realize, wait a minute, we are even, we're the, first of all, if you're talking about so-called black, you are the majority, or so-called POC, you are the majority. That being said, though, even outside of that, right, not to get stuck on that culturally, national-wise, even if you're not the majority, you are a major force of what's going to happen for safety when this world begins to have to deal with its consequences. Why? Because you as Israel, right? You as Israel must be sealed. And when you begin to start, when your life, I'm here to tell you something. Persons in your life are not so upset. I'm just going to give you some. Persons in your life are not really upset with you because you're saying you're Israel. Right? Nobody cares. Even if they think that you're playing pretend and you're making something up. You know how I know this? How you doing, Sister Knight? You know how I'm aware of this? I can tell you this easy, simply. Because when you were a child and you pretended to be whatever you want, nobody stopped everything. Right? And when you were a teenager and you had all these things that were even wrong you were saying about the world, nobody stopped you. It was like, you guys are wrong, stop talking blah, blah. Right? When you were in church and person still didn't believe in this Jesus that you said you served, nobody really stopped the presence. When we started realizing, though, that there was Yahweh Alacham, Yechashva, Ravach HaKodash, Yechad Sha'al, Alacham, Tzaddik, righteousness, all of a sudden, when nationality became something you began to snatch back, it was resurrected. Persons have a problem with it because at some point, those who were resurrected, who were up and didn't realize it, lost their place, was buried. You have been resurrected, come back up. At some point, those who are resurrected, they comprehend that at some point there has to be an insurrection. Right? There's the surrection, we were up. We were buried, and there was a resurrection. And after a resurrection, after you comprehend who you are, if you're not going to stay part of the system, even if we don't do it as forcibly as some would like, at some point there has to be an insurrection. And when there's an insurrection, that means we no longer belong to those puppets. Your strings are being cut. How you doing, Joy Boy? And when your strings are cut, oh, that's frustrating. I'm on somebody. When your strings are being cut, that's a frustrating place to be. Right? For the enemy. Right? One of the worst things that can happen is Pinocchio, has no strings. When there are no strings on you, when nobody can tell you what to do, when nobody tells you to go to the right or to the left, but only, and you can make a choice. How you doing, Sister Sherry? Come on, start. When you can make a choice for yourself, oh, we got a problem. See, because, watch this. First thing the person don't want to tell you is they're not even afraid about your obedience yet. Your obedience is when it's over. If we ever were obedient to the word, it's over. Right now, they're trying to stop you. Trying to stop you from free will, from choice. Right now, they're trying to stop us from choice. From free will. You being allowed to choose this day whom you will serve. That's the issue. See, persons don't care about you being evil, about who you say. Ultimately, a lot of persons don't realize everybody who's worshiping outside of Yahweh Elohim is worshiping what? I'm going to say this to you. Everybody who's worshiping outside of Yahweh Elohim is worshiping the devil. Ultimately. And this is when persons don't like to see, but see, we got to realize what's coming up from the depths. We're starting to go back to a place where we know what the word evil or achival means. It means iniquity. Iniquity means to be outside of the law. Anything that's outside the law, anything that is iniquitous, anything that is outside of the law is considered to be evil. And so they don't care what you call it. Malcolm X used to teach this. He said, when it comes to, certain folk in the country, they don't care about, they don't care whether you black, or I'm sorry, they don't care whether you're Muslim, they don't care whether you're Christian, They don't care if you're a Jew. They don't care if you're a Methodist, Episcopalian. They don't care if you're AME. They don't hang you because of those things. They hang you because you're black, right? It's the blackness thing for them that they're trying to make sure that there was no issue, that you still have no choice but to be under what they say. Now watch this. Here we go. Well, what is going on today? Everybody got it. Everybody wants to be. Everybody. Matter of fact, everybody should be whatever they want. Anybody can be any religion. We should all just get along. If somebody's a devil worshiper or having the Satan con, you should be okay with that. If somebody's saying they're agnostic or atheist, you should be okay with that. If somebody has devil worshippers show up to your children's school and leave tracts there, even though you can't have prayer in school, you should be okay with that, right? You should be okay with anything until it comes to the authority of the Most High. And what's happening is, as much as they tried to bury our people and our legacy and our mindset, now we're having too much stuff that's bubbling up to the surface. You know, when the bubbles come up, that means there's something under there. If I'm fishing, I'll start looking for bubbles sometimes. I see enough bubbles, or I get a nice little sound of hearing a fish that's come up, or hearing a fish, or even sometimes a turtle breathing or something. I'm not fishing for turtles, I'm just saying you can hear it, right? Well, there's signs. There's signs of that somebody's there. There's signs that something that we can say, that we can relate to, that we can fish out, that we can look for is there in the waters. And persons don't want you to get this, because when you get this, you'll realize that not only is free will something that's there, but free will is there for you to have the opportunity to come out of the matrix and come into line with Yah. Right? As the Matrix would say, even though the movie is a jacked up version of the original, right? The movies are a jacked up version of the original screenplay by the sister who originally wrote it. But as the movies will tell you, the Matrix, it's time for you to come out the Matrix and go back to Zion. And Zion can be saved. Matter of fact, it's guaranteed Zion shall be saved. Israel shall be saved. Judah shall be saved. That those grafted in shall be saved. But Judah is the standard. Israel is the standard. Isaac is the standard. Abraham is the standard. And we're starting to come back. Remember, even in church, they used to make sure that Abraham was talked about. They say, Father Abraham had many sons, and many sons said, Father Abraham, I'm one of them, and so are you. And they say, so let's just praise the Lord. But if you try to tell them this is what Abraham lived by, they would tell you, bury that. We drowned that part. There's bubbles that'll pop up. You'll see every once in a while. You'll hear a song about Abraham, but don't bring him up too much. We'll talk about Moses crossing the Red Sea, but don't talk about the standard that Moses lived by, or the fact that Christ says we should go back to that standard, or the fact that Paul says we should go back to that standard. Don't bring that up, right? Don't bring that up. Leave that buried. Leave that underwater. But from the depths. I pray this makes sense. I don't know if this is a amen message. I don't know if this is too heavy message. But I'm just trying to make sure. See, from the depths, right? Just because your story has been on the bottom of the lake doesn't mean that there's not evidence that your story exists. It's like when persons say, oh man, if there was really slavery, where would all the chattel slave ships be? First of all, there's a whole bunch of chattel slave ships underwater. People still go looking for them all the time, right? Secondly, there's a bunch of places that are made out of the slave ships that you can actually go and visit, right? All right, just like, nobody knows what actually happened to the ark, but more than likely the ark itself was used for pieces and was already being taken apart as Noah and them were coming off of it, right? Or coming out of it. They weren't allowed to, be on land again for 14 months, but they even started taking the top off and eventually, more than likely, start using what they took apart, right? So we can see that there's a lot of stuff that's left in our story, left in the story that Yah has put for us, because no matter how much man has tried to change it, to finesse it, to be whatever they want, our story is still right there. And the problem, look, and so now you got to get your scuba gear on. You said they only care when they see you living what you say, going back to that standard, right? So I got it. How you doing, Minister Samela? So I want y'all to see this. You got to be willing to put your scuba gear on. You're going to have to do some deep diving, right? There's proof, there's evidence. We know the area it's in, right? But you're not going to be able to touch it if you're not qualified. So some of us want to go in depth. This is what I've talked about before. Many of us don't recognize when you're born again. You first got to go through a gestational period to be born, and you got to look into whose womb you're being placed. And so now you got to take time out. Then you have to be fed the sincere milk. A newborn is not going scuba diving, right? Just not. We're just not going to do that, right? So if you want to go deep diving, you got to go through some things. You hear what I'm saying? Right? You got to put on your gear. Some of us have been snorkeling, and so we've been able to at least keep our heads underwater and breathe. And we've been able to see some things that we wouldn't have seen before. But it's still surface level. Because even if I can see it from the surface, it's not the same as going through. It's not the same, how you doing, Sister Tuckwa? It's not the same as going down to the depths, saying, hey, I'd like to be able to pull this. I'd like to be able to do this, see this, etc. It's not the same as getting your hands in it. It's not the same as being able to pull up artifacts. It's not the same as going in the ship and saying, yes, there is evidence of this, that, whatever, right? Like, when I was stationed in Pearl Harbor, one of the first things that my family did, outside of go to the beach, was to go to the actual place of Pearl Harbor, which is Pearl Harbor is really the Oahu is the city, or is the island, right? And Honolulu is basically the major city, the matter of fact, the capital of all the islands of Hawaii. But when you go to Pearl Harbor, that's the base where I was stationed. And when you also go to Pearl Harbor, you can go to a place that is a little off the base, but in the same area, and you go there and you get to see what happened with the ship. And you'll actually stand over it, and it's very solemn, it's very surreal, because what happened, there was so much stuff that happened, and it was so hard to get there that basically that became all those members, all my former shipmates, well, I wasn't with them, but they're still my shipmates, all my shipmates that died on that day, black, white, or otherwise, racist or otherwise, whatever. They all died that day in defense of what they believed, and no matter, and a lot of Purple Hearts went out that day, and a lot of them didn't make it. Um, but you're standing there, and they show you a movie, and it's a black and white movie, but it's a black and white movie where they actually show some stuff that really happened. So you watch the movie and you realize during it, like, the level of stuff, you see some of the stuff. They don't show you everything, of course, but you see some bullets fly, you see some persons get hit, you see some things that you're not expecting, and when you look, you realize what you're about to walk into and what you're about to walk over, because a lot of those men, and some women, but a lot of the men, um, they are still buried underneath in the water, right? Ship doors that close, doors that close as emergency doors when water gets in certain compartments. Some places where it just burned and burned and burned, and the metal melted. Could be some places to where sharks and other animals have found ways to get inside and get the bodies or whatever, but that's the graveyard. And so when you're standing over there, right, you see it, and it's a lot different. Matter of fact, there's, at least for years, I'm not sure if, I think it's still, at least last time I went, there's still some oils and stuff from the ship that sometimes seep out, unfortunately, and have to be dealt with, right? But yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff that's buried down there. But if you don't deal with what's buried, right, you don't get an appreciation for what happened in that area. You won't get an appreciation even for what happened with the enemy. You won't get an appreciation for seeing, oh, when they say that there was this black cook and he came out there and did this, you can see who he is. You can see him out there. You can see when everybody else is giving up. He wasn't even allowed to touch the weaponry. When it came time for battle, nobody cared. He did what he was supposed to do, even with persons hating him, this and that. He stood up for what he was supposed to. I'm saying all this to say that when we go to places, we start looking at stuff. A lot of persons get upset. Some persons would never would never go to a Pearl Harbor, would never go to a burial spot, would never go to something because it's a lot. It's really hard to deal with. Some persons just walk away. Some persons cry. The energy there, if I want to use this term, it sometimes becomes a dangerous term to use, but the energy there is crazy, right? It's like if you get a chance to ever go to, any of the castles that were used for chattel slavery coming out of West Africa. You go to those castles, the energy is great. You can smell people still. You can see certain things that have to be blood or have to be something that happened to a human being. It's quiet as cat. I know some person's not gonna believe. Persons go there, and now somebody might say it's your mind playing tricks on you or your spirit going through things, but regardless, persons gone there and talked about they heard screaming and things of that nature. But when you go to places like that, it's difficult for many because a lot of persons don't want to deep dive because deep diving can hurt really bad, right? But I want you as all this stuff is going through, there's going to be a lot of stuff. Matter of fact, there's some things we don't need to focus on. Some of you are focusing on Iran and Iraq and this and that, and when are we going to leave the country? You know, that's something, by the way, person been talking about for 20 years, 30 years. You know, when are we going to leave the country? When are we going to do this? It's hard. I get all that, right? But what is our focus? What does the Bible say? Our focus is to make sure that we get back to culture and we make sure we reestablish kingdom on earth. That's our focus. That's our purpose. That's our main purpose. It's not the only thing we have, but it's the main thing we're supposed to do. I say that because a lot of us are going to spend a lot of energy doing things, but here, it's time for us. We know where the places are we're supposed to dive. Now, it's not as much a question anymore. We know who we are, right? We know our names. We have historical documentation. We have leadership that's coming into place that's showing us where to look. Right? We know we're learning how to study. We're relearning our language. We're relearning our customs. We're passing on tradition, righteous tradition. Right? So now, the point of the exercise is whether it comes to places like Gallows Bay, or whether it comes to places like what happened on the bridge in between Haiti and Dominicano, or Dominican Republic. All these different things have happened. Blood-stained places that still exist from when I'm having a moment. The person, former leader of Cuba, whose son is in charge now. I don't know. I'm having a moment. Castro, whatever the case might be. We know that there's some places that are ugly for us to visit and look at. We know that it's hard to deal with looking at, hey, what did they do to us during the so-called Spanish Inquisition or the Roman Catholic Inquisition. We recognize these things, but we got to look there. It's in the depths. It's in the depths. They're trying to cover it with water, and if we don't make sure that somebody goes and does a little bit of archaeology, a little bit of deep diving, who's going to get this? Who shall believe our report if there's nothing to present? So it's important that we now go through the depths and make sure that we recognize that a whole bunch of stuff obviously has been mismanaged purposefully, has been appropriated, and it's time for us to be inappropriate. First thing you can do to be inappropriate is be that black person, so-called black person that can't swim. Go scuba diving. Get qualified. If you can't swim, learn how to swim as best you can. At least learn how to make sure that you can doggy paddle, right? Or that you can make sure that you can put your arms straight next to your side and just kick straight so that you can go down and get some in-depth stuff and come up and get to the boat, right? But it's time for us to be able to start walking this walk properly and learning and growing in what Yahweh has for us and being righteous, right? And doing what Yah wants. And there's so much stuff out there, right? But I just want you to know, just because something's been buried, it doesn't mean there's zero evidence, right? You can go to Cuba and find pyramids down in the ocean, right? You can go, you can go to different parts of America. You can go to parts of America, as far as buried underneath nature. You can go to parts in America, Illinois, and see pyramids, right? You can go to Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and see pyramids. There's more pyramids in Georgia, at least so they say, even though they're not as big, but there's more pyramids in Georgia than there are in places in Africa. By the way, a lot of persons don't know this, even though some might say this is what do they call it, a cult. But a lot of persons don't know. Do you know that there are a group of people that build pyramids in the United States of America? I don't recall if it's like Texas, Louisiana, like Mississippi, whichever one, Alabama, somewhere in there. But somewhere in the United States of America, still to this day, there is a group of persons. Now, they don't follow our belief systems. That being said, there's a group of persons still to this day that build pyramids. When persons say they don't know how pyramids are built, there are persons still to this day that actually build pyramids and build them the way that they were built from the times of Kemet, marrying some of the stuff that they learned about what was done in so-called Mexico. So there are still persons that actually live lives where they try to build pyramids. So when I'm saying stuff is buried, I'm not just only talking about the stuff that's happened from some of our ancestry. I'm talking about some of us that are alive today, where they'll tell you, we don't know how they built the pyramids. There's some of your people now building pyramids. If you like, go and ask if you can watch, or go and just see if they'll tell you how they do it. I don't know if they will, I don't know if they won't. I've never talked to them, but I know they exist. Matter of fact, I don't know the name of the guy. This is this is the proof of evidence right here that you don't, that if you really want it, maybe he'll tell you on a live session or something one day. I don't know, or maybe he said it before in times past. I know he's discussed it on like the Joe Budden podcast and other stuff. The guy, black guy who was on CNN, and a couple years ago, was it 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, maybe last year, but there was a guy. He was on CNN, so-called black man. He was on CNN, and he was speaking against what Israel was doing to the Palestinians, and CNN fired him. I don't recall his name, but you might know who I'm talking about if you watch CNN enough. I don't really know CNN like that, but I know his face. I knew him. Well, I guess he was known even from back in the day, but he does a lot of stuff and stands for a lot of injustice and stuff. At least he tries to. What he believes is injustice, he fights against it. He was raised in the so-called cult. I don't know if it is or isn't. And by the way, cult just means culture, but you know what they mean by cult. I don't know if it's a so-called cult or not, but he was actually born and raised in that cult. So he grew up believing in what they were doing, trying to get to be with the gods, becoming gods, possibly stuff themselves, and believing that every person should learn how to build a pyramid. So he built a pyramid. He built a pyramid growing up. Right. Later, when he got older, he felt like the teachings weren't what he needed to be under, and he left. But he's actually somebody. So if you know if you can find out who I'm talking about, look, 2 years ago there was a black person. You can Google it or whatever, look it up on YouTube. 2 years ago there was a guy on CNN doing really well for himself. Still does really well for himself, but was doing well for himself, tracking as far as CNN stuff. And he got canceled and ultimately fired because even though CNN's supposed to be so left, he came out and he was talking trash about what Israel was doing to the Palestinians and genocide, and they fired him. So if you find out who that is, look up his background as a child. He is from the group of people I'm talking about in the United States of America that still build pyramids. So if somebody says you can't build a pyramid, he'd be one of the first person to tell you, no, you can build a pyramid, and there's ways of shifting huge amounts of stone and moving it and taking it and doing this. It's known today. Mark Lamont Hill. That's it. Thank you. Mark Lamont Hill. Right? That's who it is. So if you look him up, I know there's a Joe Budden podcast where he talks about it. I heard about, I don't know how long ago he discussed it, but that was recently. I heard him talk about that maybe 3 weeks ago, something like that. I happened to see it. But yeah, and he was talking about how he still deals with stuff because they were very anti-white, so it's difficult for him to even talk to white people to this day, or he has like certain things about colorism. So if you're light-skinned, you're not as great as somebody who's dark-skinned, so he still has issues with that stuff. So some of the stuff they were teaching was obviously wrong, but I'm just saying all this stuff, long story short, he used to be part of that group, whatever that group is called. That's what he was raised in. So that's what I'm saying. Like, person will bury the truth so much that you won't even look to see, is there evidence to the contrary? Not from the past, right now. Right? Like right now, there's persons all over the world who say they're Israelites. Why are we busy saying that nobody believes that they're Israelites? They were saying this in the 1900s, the 1800s, the 1700s, 1600s. They were asking for, they were asking for freedom based upon them being Israelites, slaves, Negro slaves. But for some reason, somebody will tell you this stuff. It's like when person say chattel slavery is done with. No, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, but just recently in Georgia, they had to go onto a plantation and free black slaves and black so-called black Americans and so-called black Mexicans who have been traded and who have been taken and who have been used for chattel slavery in the good old state, right? That good old state, that evil state of Georgia. Right? It was happening right then. How you doing, Dark Shalom team? Right? It was happening right then. So I'm just trying to tell you and show you, like, there's a lot of different things that you can look up and see, and they're buried. In some of them, the best place to bury or hide it is in plain sight. So some of the things that you're so busy saying can't happen, won't happen, I can't understand somebody saying, they're buried right in front of your face because they know many of us won't put on the scuba gear and do some deep dive. But this is the season. So I'm just going to put this there as a rule of thumb. Some of you think that I'm whatever on this, or I'm too whatever on this. I don't know what adjective you like to place upon me or upon this statement I'm about to say. Every time that you hear something from the government, any government, when I say the government, if it's not the kingdom of heaven, I mean, it's the beast. They all the same. They're working for the same thing, right? And so if you hear anything from them, you should think to yourself, let me put on my scuba gear and dive deeper. That means also, too, some of these churches, are part of the beast. They support the beast. They tell you to do what the beast says, right? They tell you to be on the left or to the right. They preach sermons and say, if you're not with Trump, you're a demon, you're a devil. If you're not with Biden, you ain't black enough. They preach this stuff from pulpits. So what I would say to you is any part of the beast, including these pulpits, these so-called altars that have been altered, anytime they can't tell you anything, dive deep. That means you got to get certified. Put your scuba gear on. Do your studying. Practice your strokes. Make sure that you are healthy enough for the move of Yah. Because what he's asking us to do before we go ahead and take our treasure, you got to be able to get to the treasure. The treasure is there with our ancestry. But when we dig up the ancestry, we'll dig up the treasure. When you dig up the treasure, we can start looking for a place to put it. It's buried underwater. They put it there for a reason. And they're afraid now that you found the place to go. They're afraid that you will use free will, because free will means that you have the choice to go look for yourself to see if what Yah says is correct. You have a choice to look for yourself to see if what I have to say is correct. And if it is of Yah, you have a choice. You have a choice to ask questions. Not just for the sake of asking questions, but for the sake of growth. Are you ready to dive deep? From the depths we shall rise. Our story is down there. Just because it's in the water doesn't mean there's nothing there. There's sediment covering it. But sediment's easy. You can brush sediment away. Right? There might be some stuff that's weighted, that's heavy. Right? But why would we not make sure that we come correct and ready as a community to pull out whatever's there, even if by rope, even if by pulley system? Right? The more we're educated about pulling ourselves up out of the depths of things, right? I'm going to finish up real quick. But the more we're educated about going to the depths and learning who we are and of who we are, the more we'll have to learn concerning how to get down there. So then you'll start learning, how do we work together? How do you build the pulley systems? How do you have your own ships? How do you make sure that you put money into it? How do you put a community together that's invested in getting this stuff together? You see, the goal is to dig deep in all the stuff that they buried. They buried a lot of our stuff and a lot of our story underwater, under this dirt, under earth, under these secrets, under these lies. But once we make it a point to say, getting the ancestry and the tradition and the belief system, etc., the culture back, when we make that our priority, then everything else around us is going to be designed to make sure that we can get there. Right? If you have a country that's big on fishing, I promise you, fishing poles, fishing nets, bait, chum, right, boats, etc., are going to be in huge supply. If you go to a place, right, if you go to the United States of America, I'm not sure if it's number one or number two, right, but either the number one or number two export is hip-hop, believe it or not. The thing that we sell and make the most money off of is hip-hop. So guess what you'll find, even if you don't find the folk that do hip-hop, guess what you'll find a little bit of in some way, shape, or form, even if it's a really jacked up version of it. You'll find hip-hop everywhere. Right? You'll find whatever a country is known for. If a country makes most of their money off of tourism, guess what? Or if you go to a city, if you go to Miami, right, there's going to be a whole lot of stuff that's built for tourists. If you go to Miami and you want to live there, you got to have a heart to live the life of a tourist to a certain degree. Why? Because it's set up for tourism. They're making their money off of it. So you're going to see a whole bunch of cruise ships. You're going to see a host of huge hotels. You're going to see some of the best restaurants to ever exist. You're going to see places to where you can go to the club. You're going to see why? Because tourism. Right? So if we're going to, so when we start to invest as a people and saying we're going to dig deep no matter how long it takes, you'll come to find out that everything around you will take shape. And you'll start to build a diaspora. Your diaspora will be built, your community will be built around that. I'm on? Okay, so prayerfully that makes sense. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you. I'll go ahead and let you go. Shabbat Shalom to you all. Hope to see you guys tomorrow, 8 a.m. New York time. And as always, remember that you are loved, you are necessary, you are majestic, you are fearfully, wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in the system no longer have to be of it. Shabbat shalom.